Each time in the Gospels, it's always fascinating and wonderful to read again and anew these moments when Jesus identifies and he calls by name his disciples, his apostles, to follow him. Because each one is so personal in particular. In other words, it's not random or haphazard. Jesus didn't just wander around and said, "Oh, I guess you come and follow me." But he sees and he knows Nathanael, and he invites him to follow him. And what's so extraordinary is, as Jesus calls these men then, it's the same God, the same Jesus, the same Lord, who calls you and me now by name to follow him. We know this practically. At your baptism, the first thing ever said about you was your name was spoken. As the priest or the deacon said, "What name do you give your child?" to your parents. Because God knows and he calls and he desires you by name to follow after him. And not merely just to be nice and to come along, but he calls you to follow after and to participate in his extraordinary mission of bringing the grace, the mercy, the salvation of Jesus on the cross into the world. You know, it's nice when we hear that, of course, and the priest would say things like this, but it's not mere rhetoric. And at the same time, we wonder, well, what can I do? Perhaps in my mind, I think I'm too young, or I'm too old, I'm too weak, I'm too strong. All kinds of attributes, or more precisely, limitations, come right into our mind. And we think, okay, sure, maybe Jesus called these disciples then, or these other people that I can recognize and know in my life, but me? Yes. Despite the inadequacies that come to our mind, which is not a kind of humility, but I think is an insecurity, Jesus knows these. Just like he knew all of the ways that these disciples would fall short as they stumbled along following after him, as all but John abandoned him at his crucifixion. He knew their weaknesses and their struggles, and he calls them just as he calls you. Because God is eternal, he's infinite. And so when he sees you, he doesn't see you and I through the limited human viewpoint that we have. He sees us eternally. And he recognizes that as we participate, as we unite ourselves because of our baptism to Jesus, that our actions, whether they're big and known or little, those little moments of love and of sacrifice, of suffering, that aren't always acknowledged, that are quiet and small, that seem insignificant, united to Jesus, become eternal. That you and I, in the most awesome and extraordinary way, participate truly in the eternal acts and work of Jesus. So we hear this story, this moment of Jesus calling Nathanael, Bartholomew, and we recognize that he calls you and he calls me. And like Nathanael, let us hear this call and say, yes, you made me, you created me, you know me, and you invite me to be your disciple. And so I am and I will. I'll unite my actions, my struggles, my suffering, my acts of love to Jesus, that we might follow after and be the saints that he calls us to be.